Hello, and welcome back to Gamers House Loft. Come in, kick back, relax, and listen to me ramble. I'm continuing the saga of Rasender, the quote-unquote dumb D&D player. Now in the last video I said that Rasender wasn't really stupid or dumb per se, but he's just playing an edgelord and an anime character of his two favorite shows being One Piece and Solo Leveling. There's nothing wrong in playing that way. When all it does is bog down the game, it can be seen as dumb. But you can never really get rid of yourself of murder hobos in D&D. But, with that being said, come in, kick back, relax, and listen to me ramble. The saga continues from Reddit user Leadership Otter 5524 with a continuation of the D&D Dumb Story, titled D&D Dumb Story 2 or Rasender the Wise. So, this is the second part of the story of Rasender I started on the previous post. This will likely be shorter because this is probably the more normal and okay character this player has ever played, but that's not saying much. Some context to those not coming from the previous post. Newish guy, but said to have experience of role-playing, our Rasender managed to kill one-third of the party on his debut and now has rolled up a new character, and so have the other players who met their unfortunate ends. The game is D&D 3.5 and the cast. Me, DM. Barbarian, actually fighter / barbarian, but this is for short. Rogue, now fighter rogue, and at this time blind because of Rasender's related shenanigans, and kinda pissed at him. Cleric, actually cleric rogue, a gnome cleric of the god of law, natural law, earth, and authority. Ranger, the bard from the previous story, and playing the long-lost brother of Rogue, who was at first interpreted by the other players who had to leave for job-related issues about 8 months prior to this story. He had adopted the character after Bard died. Fighter, the ranger from previous story, with a bow and arrow focused build. And, of course, our star, Rasender, now playing a cleric. Well, sort of. You see, during the Battle of the Crow Tower from the previous post, he learned that unlike a fighter, a cleric might eventually attack with his precious 3 weapons, being 1 in each hand and a summoned spiritual weapon, much like on 5e. A floated weapon representing the god's weapon, but without the need for spending bonus actions since those did not exist on 3.5. So he thought, main weapon attack plus second weapon attack plus spiritual weapon equal forfeit or equal anime character accomplished. However, he was very thoroughly warned that A, priests do not have the same martial prowess as fighters, and B, have a deep commitment to their religion and might be a bit of a role-playing challenge. He, being Rasender of course, proceeded to ignore the two. Also, he wanted to be proficient with longswords, which by default clerics are not, and thus had to pick the war domain to gain it. In this homebrew setting, there were 4 gods who could give it, and since one looked too goody two-shoes, and the other 2 were too weird, he decided then to pick Sulliver, the god of tactics, the god of chess, competition, and strategy. Essentially, the gods' teaching revolved around strategy, ironic I know, level-headedness, and knowledge and preparation, but also never denying the god's name or losing temper. Now, the rogue, as I said, started to get some anonymity towards him out of game, mainly for derailing the previous game. He didn't hate the guy, but were clear he wouldn't go out of his way to help him again if he did something too stupid. Luckily, this character did not want to challenge anyone to a duel, but he did overcorrect and play a bit cowardly, and was very guarded about casting his spells. The plot at this point revolved around coming to a new town, a mining town, and the final destiny of the expedition they were in, where the previous villain, evil cleric / cultist type, was making various blood sacrifices at an old mine, as well as creating animosity between the various mining guilds and mercenary companies in the city, in order to ultimately summon a demon. The players, with the help of the previous gnome NPCs, joined one of the companies, since it's the easiest way to be allowed in all the mines to investigate, and after a bit of intrigue, came into their first mine expedition. There, they met the unusual monsters plus people hired by rival companies, and got into some fights. During those, Rasender would just attack from the backline with his sword. The one, he had wisely decided to use as a shield until he got to pick the feat to dual wield, and only when someone was already engaged. The fight would go like, Rasender, you won the initiative, what will you do? I wait until another player attack, and so on. He would also never use his spells. Ever. When someone, specifically the cleric, asked why didn't he cast so-and-so, and he would just answer with, strategy. He thought he was doing a play with his god thing. Even when another player fell in combat, he did not heal him or even get close to protect him, just saying, in character, "Shut up, it's my strategy," and so on. Now, I'm going to take a quick besides here and say that Cleric went from an edgelord to a comedic character, and is now purposely trying to derail combats or make them harder for the other players. It is becoming increasingly more apparent that Rasender doesn't want to play or even win D&D, he wants to be a nuisance for the rest of the party for giggles. That's even worse than any edgelord or murder hobo in my opinion. Do better, Cleric. Eventually, the players got some information on the mines about a compromised company, and came back to town to present it to the mayor and council. After this, they got a pass to operate more or less independently, and had a meeting with the other players to decide what to do next. Some wanted to go after the haunted mine where the cultist could be. He was there. While the others wanted to investigate more plot hooks around town, all ultimately linked to the cult, and Rasender was on the second group. As they discussed, he got into a serious argument with Rogue and said, "This is more strategic, as he can level up more before the fight, and thus, it's what my god would do." I intervened, saying the god doesn't necessarily knew EXP points existed, and that they also have no way of knowing if the cultist wouldn't be able to reinforce or even succeed as his objective at the meantime. Rogue created a very well-constructed, if angry, argument in character about how it'd be more strategic to go after the enemy now, before he even discovered they knew where he was, and had a plan to counter them, and ended up with, "Ain't this what Silvara would do?" Rasender, losing patience, "Well, if he would, then he's dumb for not understanding more adventures means more power." I asked if that was really in character, and had him pass a very easy religion knowledge. To understand that this is blasphemy, he passed and said, "Well, I don't say this then, I guess." So now he wants to call his god dumb? The god of strategy dumb. That is rich coming from someone thinking that strategy means hanging in the back as you let your teammates do all the fighting and healing for you. At this point, you're trying to make D&D a point-and-click adventure while you literally do nothing, and you just sit back while your party does everything else. How is it supposed to be fun for your teammates, your DM, or even you? Eventually, they decided to go to the mine, which ended up having, after a fight against giant spiders, the entrance to an old, desecrated temple of Silver, with a few puzzles, most of which could be solved, either passing them or disarming their magical triggers, something only the rogues, gnome cleric / rogue, and actual rogue could do. With this, I wanted to introduce better to the new player and having him interact more with the lore. Rasender, of course, insisted that since this was sanctuary for his god, he should go through the trials alone, something never mentioned to him anywhere, so he could get all the EXP, better strategy of course, and he specifically did not want the help of a rogue, because he was a filthy infidel, not strategic enough. So he ended up failing most of the puzzles and taking some form of damage / dealing it to the group, while either one of the others would solve it or cleric disarm them. Rogue at this point had decided to let Rasender do his thing. As a result, Rasender got into a very low health, despite the other cleric healing him and spending all of his spell slots, but did not heal himself, strategy, at no point. Eventually, the group, and I, learned, surprised that he had not prepared any healing spells for the day, strategy, just as they got to fight the evil gnome cultist boss. During this final fight, however, Rasender finally demonstrated the depth of his planning and strategy, not casting any spell and attacking with his sword only when other players was engaged, until eventually getting to 0 HP and becoming unconscious. He did not die, though, not this time. But after the fight, he decided that being a cleric might not be his thing after all, and come up with his new and final character, the dumbest and probably more incredibly played for them all, a wizard, which I will talk about in a future post. Well, that was a story alright. Now, this I can say was a pretty dumb story. Being a cleric and not having any healing spells, not doing any fighting besides wanting 3-sword style, and only using an attack when all the other enemies were engaged. Again, like I said, this cleric wanting to sit back and watch a story, then be in one and help drive it forward. It was like he was in the passenger seat with an extra brake pedal and wanted to slam on the brakes till the party did what he wanted. And even after all that, he still wasn't satisfied because everybody else didn't do everything for him. Besides the whole temple thing, he was perfectly fine saying of all things that didn't give more EXP. Sorry about that. I told you that I like to ramble. But I hope that in the next part that hasn't come out yet, they finally kick this player, or at least spare the rest of the party of the sins of the edgelord Zoro/Shadow Monarch. Yes, I watch anime. But with the story told and my rambles over, I'd like to thank you all for coming back to my loft and enjoying the story. Maybe the next part will come out soon, but with that being said, be safe, have fun, and enjoy my forest hovel. Farewell.